And when I say queer, I mean rainbow queer, not strange queer, just be queer. Clear. What's up, book nerds? I'm Lucky's Universe, and in this week's video, instead of doing just my usual boring book review, we are doing something called Tea and a Book, where we grab a cup of tea and we talk about a book, which I realize is just my usual boring book review, but we're gonna ignore that and move on. I am drinking peppermint and licorice tea today, and the book we'll be discussing is Malice by Heather Walter, which was released in April 2021. So before we start, get yourself a cup of tea or coffee or an alternative beverage and take a moment to center yourself in book space, which is a healthy and inclusive space where we can talk about our opinions about books without hate or bullying. It's important to remember that not enjoying a book or critiquing a book is not the same as spreading hate, and just because I dislike a book doesn't mean that everyone should do that, and it certainly doesn't mean that people who like the book should be excluded or hated on. And just because I like a book, it doesn't mean that everyone has to like it. My words are not law, my opinions are not facts. If you haven't read this book but want to know what it's about, you can still watch the first part of this video where I'll summarize the main points of the plot without giving spoilers. The second and third parts, so characters and writing, will contain spoilers, so I'll give you a heads up when that's coming and you can skedaddle. Alright, let's get into it. So Malice was sent to me a while ago by Penguin Books, and I've only now just gotten around to reading it because I am drowning in books, guys. My TBR is so long. Book space. It's Heather Walter's debut novel, a YA fantasy retelling of Sleeping Beauty with a queer twist. And when I say queer, I mean rainbow queer, not strange queer, just be queer. Clear. Let's set the scene. Welcome to Briar, a human kingdom which has for some time been allied to the Fae courts. Briar didn't used to exist. A member of a race of dark creatures called the Veela stole the Fae King's staff, which is what he used to wield his magic. So the Fae King decreed that whoever could return his staff to him could have some land and be a king or queen. And so this woman, Leithana, retrieved his staff and established the Kingdom of Briar with the Fae King's blessing. The Fae King also spelled the Briar crown so that only female descendants of Leithana could wear the crown, and Briar would always be ruled by a queen. Somewhere along the line, the Fae also presented the Kingdom of Briar with another gift. Every so often, children are born with golden eyes and golden blood. These are graces, whose magic blood can be mixed into elixirs in order to produce any desired effect depending on their powers. So a beauty grace can alter your appearance, a wisdom grace can make you wiser, there are dancing graces and music graces, anything you can imagine, there is a grace for it. The graces were obviously coveted by everybody, and so the kingdom had to introduce laws to control the graces. From the moment that a grace is identified, they are sent to be trained and then placed in grace houses where they begin to receive clients for their elixirs. They receive money for their service, but most of it goes to the crown, and all of the grace houses have ranks depending on how talented their graces are and how many clients they get. Graces cannot refuse a paying customer, they cannot take substances to alter the potency of their blood, they cannot have intimate relationships with anyone, and they can never leave Briar. As a grace ages, their blood becomes less potent until it stops working altogether. When this happens, the crown will offer the fated grace a favorable marriage or a place as a house mistress in a grace house. Briar is a very secluded kingdom. Over time, because the graces allow people to alter their appearance and change their personalities with a simple elixir, Briar became obsessed with obtaining perfection. Worried that other kingdoms would steal their graces and have access to their powers, Briar pretty much sealed itself off from every other kingdom and country. In addition to the graces, the Briar royal family is also wrapped up in kind of a tricky curse. Remember the Veela? Well, because of a reason that I can't quite recall at this moment, I think it was because of a war, Avila cursed all of the daughters of Briar's queens, meaning that every daughter from that day forth would die at the age of 21. The Fae were able to soften that curse so that it could be broken by true love's kiss. So every Briar princess needs to be kissed by their true love before they turn 21, or else they will die. And the Briar queens couldn't just stop having children and let the curse die out, because remember, only female descendants of Laethana can wear the crown, so no heirs, no queen, therefore plunging Briar into political turmoil. Our main character is 20-year-old Alice, who is a half Vila who lives and works in one of the Grace houses and is known as the Dark Grace. Because of the curse on the royal family, everyone pretty much hates the Vila, plus they were all supposed to have been extinct. However, when Alice was discovered abandoned as a child, the Grace Council and the Crown allowed her to live because she was only half Vila and she didn't seem to possess any of the great and terrible powers that the full Vila did. But it doesn't change the fact that everybody in Briar despises her. Although she's not technically a Grace, Alice still works as one, and her blood is used in elixirs to produce some pretty nasty effects. They're all to do with cursing people, making people ugly, just some downright gross things. Hence why everyone calls her the Dark Grace. Despite the Vila supposedly being extinct, Alice manages to stumble upon one who promises to teach her how to harness her true powers. Amidst this, Alice also manages to land an invitation to the palace where she meets Princess Aurora, who is the last surviving princess of Briar. Aurora's oldest sisters have all died from their curse, and so the king and queen are making Aurora meet with and kiss an enormous amount of suitors every single day. Although same-sex couples are common and accepted in Briar, Aurora is forbidden from kissing female suitors. Because the last princess whose true love was a woman met a pretty tragic end, and also the future queen of Briar needs to produce biological heirs so that there is a female Laethana descendant to wear the Briar crown. Aurora enlists Alice's expertise to find a way to break the curse without her having to kiss her true love. Since the first queen, Laethana, the Briar queens have been slowly giving more of their power and responsibility over to their husbands, and Aurora's mother has basically no role in ruling the kingdom at all. Aurora wants no part of this. She wants to rule on her own. She wants to reform the Grace Council and give the Graces more freedom. As Alice and Aurora work together, they discover a new layer of Briar that has been kept hidden for generations. Aurora learns what it means to rule, and Alice learns the true extent of her wicked and terrible powers. But what will she use them for? So that's the basic outline of the plot. If you want to read this book without spoilers, oh, there's a bird on the window. It's a little willy wagtail. Hi. If you want to read this book without spoilers, this is the time that you say goodbye. Thank you for joining us. And for the rest of you, let's start talking about the characters and the writing. Alice is our protagonist, and the book is titled Malice, partly because that's a cruel nickname that the other members of the Grace house give her. I was excited about Alice's character because this is a fairy tale retelling, and she was set up to be some sort of maleficent character, so I was excited to see her do some evil shit. However, she had some drawbacks. There were whiffs, there were accents, there were subtle notes of a pick-me girl in there. Alice is so not like other girls. She dresses purposely like a witch to make people stay away from her. She's sickly pale with green veins. She has no interest in any beautifying products and tends to scoff at those who do. There's nothing wrong with being a girl who doesn't really vibe with makeup and ball gowns. But my pet peeve is when the characters that are set up to be the protagonist's obstacles are almost always the stereotypical girly girls. Characters who care about their appearance through jewelry and clothes and makeup. They're always the high school mean girl or the evil queen. The Kingdom of Briar is obsessed with perfection, and yes, vanity is not the best personality trait, but there's a difference between being vain and just wanting to wear some pretty eyeshadow. I don't mind characters who are makeup free and just awkward with stereotypically feminine things because I used to be that girl. I only knew how to do dramatic stage makeup, but outside of the theater, I was a mess. My school ball was one of the worst nights of my life because it involved a floor-length gown, high heels, makeup, and hair. I was just not a fan. But if you can't tell, I've evolved and now I really like wearing makeup, but sometimes I feel like I have to constantly justify why I like it or downplay how much I enjoy it because of the way that girls who like stereotypically feminine things are portrayed in books and in other media types. My point is here that I don't mind that Alice isn't into makeup and clothes, but I'm uncomfortable with the way that she sometimes mocks those who do. Aurora. You could have done so much more if you'd only had time. Aurora is a girl with a lot of dreams and a free spirit, which I think was a great contrast with Alice's more pessimistic outlook. She pushed Alice to be more proactive and take control of her life. My only real issue with Aurora is I just don't think her arc was that good. When readers first meet her, she is a princess who wants to take charge of her fate and reform the kingdom. And at the end of the book, she's a princess who wants to take charge of her fate and reform the kingdom. She just doesn't have that much development, and I don't think she suffers any real setbacks in the book. Not any that we personally get to witness anyway. Since the story is told purely from Alice's perspective, we often just get told that Aurora is going through something in the palace, but we don't actually get to see it. I'm not sure, I just think that makes it a little less impactful, and I just couldn't build her character that much in my head. Aurora's lack of individual plotline was one of the reasons that I couldn't quite get invested in her and Alice's romance. Let me tell you, I love a good sapphic romance, okay? I think it is such an underrated subgenre, especially in YA. Everyone seems to go on and on about MLM romance, and then the lesbians just get forgotten. Like, come on. However, I just feel like Aurora was simply an object that was used to point Alice in the right directions to solve the plot, and then she just left Alice alone to do her main character business. I don't think they spent enough time together to form a true connection. I don't know, I'm really on the fence. Like, I don't hate it. I thought they were cute, but it could have been better, I think. Now we need to talk about the writing in this book. This is Heather Walters' debut novel, meaning it's her first published book, so it's understandable that there would be a few kinks. Look, the writing itself, in terms of sentence structure and word choice, it's absolutely fine. I have no qualms. My qualm is with the 100-page information dump at the beginning of this book. The entire first part of this video, setting the scene, that's the first 100 pages condensed into a few paragraphs. All of the world building, all of the history, the magic system, the characters and the curses, they're all told to readers through the main character recounting events in her head. I felt like I was reading a history book. I also felt like it was a lot. Like, I love the concept of this book. Dark lesbian fairy tale, yes. And the world itself was interesting, you know, with the Graces and the Kingdom of Briar, but the way that it was told to us, it just felt overly complicated. And I definitely feel like those first 100 pages could have used some editing to polish it up. You wouldn't even have to cut any of it. Just introduce it by showing, not telling. For instance, we learn about the first Briar Queen, Leithana, through Alice recounting the history in her head. Why not have it play out in a dream? Have a sorcerer character induce a vision. Have Alice walk past a street singer and hear the story of Leithana through a song, and give us the information slowly and sparsely. That way we don't feel like we're reading a textbook. The plot also could have been a little more direct. Even after the first 100 pages, I was unclear on the main objective. A character can have more than one objective, but there needs to be a main goal, and I don't think Alice had one. Like, is it the struggle between good and evil? Is she trying to reconnect with her past and her history? Is she trying to secure Aurora's affections? Is she trying to be accepted by the Kingdom of Briar? There's just so much going on, and none of them jump out as the main goal. It was just a little vague and confusing. And the plot kind of relied on Alice making really big leaps of logic that didn't seem realistic at all. Some characters were just basic stereotypes, like the Briar King, who's just a straight up evil dude with no depth. The story lacked an antagonist, aka the villain. If a protagonist needs to achieve a goal, then the one who tries to prevent the protagonist from achieving that goal is the antagonist or the villain. But since Alice didn't have a clear goal, there was no clear antagonist, the evil person was just everyone. You could argue that Alice is both the protagonist and the antagonist, but she didn't really accept her wickedness until the end of the book, so that was a little disappointing. This book reminded me a lot of Gina Showalter's The Evil Queen, which is a favorite of mine and has a similar theme. It's about a girl who is fated to live out the Snow White prophecy, in which she is the evil queen. The main character is hated and misjudged by her kingdom despite her good intentions, and eventually she just decides to become the monster that everybody thinks she is. I'd say the writing complexity in terms of sentence structure and word choice is about the same as Malice, but Showalter is a very seasoned author, and so the plot structure is way more defined. However, despite all this, I still liked Malice. I've read a lot of fairy tale retellings, and this one sits quite solidly in the middle. There were some lines of dialogue that made me go, ooh, I liked that one. And I liked the cliffhanger at the end. So that brings us to the end of Tea in a Book featuring Malice by Heather Walter. Thank you so much to Penguin Books for sending this to me, and thank you to everyone who made it to the end of this very long video. If you don't already follow me on TikTok, make sure to go check that out. I post some pretty cool stuff on there, and I will also leave a link to my Goodreads account down below. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you later.